Okay, can we all see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so sorry about that. I think the network froze on me. So, like I said, we're looking at building application with Django today. This was supposed to be last week's class, but unfortunately, we had network issues, and we're just going to do that this week, and then we'll do a pre-recorded session for the class that was supposed to hold today, the materials we're supposed to cover today, because I felt it is very, very important for us to see these things live so that when we are developing our own project, we won't have issues with setting it up. So we just spoke about dependencies. We said a dependency is a package that a project requires in order to run. So the in our big two class, we discussed about modules and packages. There's a reason why I brought that topic in, because as we will see that module, like we said, a module is just a file, a Python file, right? And then in that Python file, you could have functions and classes inside. Then it becomes a package when it's a collection of modules, right? So when you have more than 2, 3, 4 modules with different class definitions and functions and methods, they now become a package. So now, typically when you're building any software, front end, back end, whatever application you're building, most times you would have to rely on third-party packages, right? These are called dependencies. They enable you perform certain operations. They enable you leverage on other people's code base or functionality, right, that they've written. And most times we don't really have to know how they wrote those methods or functionalities. All we need to do is just to pick and plug into our application and then passing the necessary arguments in order to make use of it. Next, we'll be talking about a virtual environment. A virtual environment helps us install Python modules in an isolated location rather than installing them globally. Each virtual environment has its own Python binary and can have its own independent set of installed Python packages in its site directory. So with Python development, when you're trying to set up a project, it is industry standard that you set up a virtual environment. A virtual environment is such that you install Python and every other packages needed for that project in an isolated location so that it doesn't affect other installations you made before. Like I have Python installed globally in my laptop, but when I want to build a project, I try to install it again in an isolated environment so that it doesn't clash with other versions of Pythons or other versions of modules or packages I have installed on my system. So it's basically that. So each time you're creating a Django project, it is advisable you create a virtual environment first before you actually install Django. Okay. So now we're going to start a project and we're going to create a virtual environment. That's the first thing to do. So we're going to create and activate a virtual environment called Hello Django in a conda environment. Now, let me state clearly that there are different ways to create a virtual environment. You can use pip. There's a package called pip VNV. There's another one called virtual env. But in this case, we'll be using conda to create a virtual environment. So we need to access the command line interface using our Mac or Windows system. In the Windows, you open the terminal and then choose Anaconda prompt and type the command below. So now what I'm basically going to be doing is I'm going to be creating a virtual environment called Hello Django with Python 3.9. I already have Python 3.9 installed in my local environment. Sorry, globally, I have Python installed globally. So I also have Conda installed. It's part of the requirement at the beginning of this training. We said we should install Conda, we should install Python and all of those stuff. So we already have it installed if you follow the initial instruction I gave. So now we're going to enter this command into our terminal, essentially to create a virtual environment. So I'm going to switch now to my terminal. Can we all see my terminal?
Yes, I can see your terminal.
So I'm trying to create a virtual environment called Hello World. Then I'm going to CD into that virtual environment so that whatever installation I run would actually be inside the virtual environment. So right now I'm inside the base environment. If you look at my terminal, you see this base bracket base. This is the default virtual environment that comes with Conda. So I want to create my own virtual environment now and then activate it. Each time you create a virtual environment, you're supposed to also activate the environment. So by the time I activate the virtual environment, you see that it will now show Hello Django instead of the base environment that I have here. So I'm trying to do that now. So it's going through Conda Forge to set it up, spin it up. So this may take a little. So before it does that, it's going to give us a prompt for us to accept that. Then the next thing we'll do now is to activate the virtual environment using this command. So it's still trying to create it. I think my network is slowing this process down. So essentially, every Django project you create, you must create a virtual environment, right? So so by the time we activate the virtual environment, like I said, we'll see Hello Django instead of the base environment. Okay. So if it's not exactly what we see above that, okay, then it means that we didn't probably install it properly, but you have to see that Hello Django will now be the base environment from where you can now do your installation. After that, we can now go on to install Django. So let me quickly check if, I don't know why it's taking time. So before, okay, yeah, see me, yes. Okay, so it's trying to create one now. So, Dominic, did you actually use Conda when you were trying to set up your virtual environment?
No. I didn't use Conda.
Okay. Yeah, like I said, there are many tools. You can use pipenv, you can use VNV. There's one VNV.
Yes, I used pipenv. Venv.venv.
Okay, yeah. All right. It still does the same thing actually, regardless. So after this, the next thing is to activate it. And then all installation goes into the environment so that it doesn't clash with some existing packages you have in your system. I don't know why this is taking much time. So after that, the next thing we'll do is to install Django. Like we all know, Django is hosted on the Python package index, PyPy13, a central repository for most Python packages. We will use pip, the most popular package installer, which comes included with Python, to do the installation, right? So to install the latest version of Django, we'll use Python -n pip install Django. We can actually just go straight and use pip install Django. But due to the improvement they made for security concerns, we'll use the full command, which is Python -m, the M flag, then pip install Django, greater than or equals to 4.1, 4.0 version. That's the version of Django we're going to install for these projects setup. Let me check. This thing is still okay. Yeah, just. So I'm trying to activate the environment now. Now you will notice that it will change from this base to hello Django now. Okay, so fine. So can we all see that we now have hello Django as the base environment now? So next thing is we would so now let's create a directory called hello Django. Now I have to create a folder called hello Django so that I can now install my Django inside this folder. So let me change directory into hello Django. So as we can see, I'm now inside this hello Django folder in a virtual environment, right? So this virtual environment now is associated to this hello Django project or template. So whatever installation I make would be inside this hello Django folder connected to this virtual environment. So this virtual environment is actually inside this hello Django folder, right? So the next thing we'll do now is to use this command to actually install a Django version 4.0 or higher. So python-m pip install Django. So this will install Django in this directory, hello Django directory. But remember that everything still stays in a virtual environment. So now okay, so I'm getting an error here. Let me just do install Django. So with this command, it's going to install the latest version of Django inside this project. Pip install Django to install the latest version of Django inside this project. So from there, once we have Django installed now, we can now begin to use certain commands to set up our projects, So now this Django installation will actually come with some dependencies. You can see it's collecting all of those dependencies. It has SQLite database. It has this package called TZ data. It has ASCII-ref, a lot of stuff. So it's going to come bundled with all of this stuff, just to ensure that we have a working project going. So you can even see typing extensions, SQL parser, all of these packages will come with Django because Django requires them as dependency for our project to actually run properly. So let's just wait for it to install. All right. So now once we have the Django installed and its dependencies in our project, remember our project has a virtual environment. Okay, now it's done, right? It has installed. Let me clear the console. Now let's move on. The next thing we're going to do is to start a Django project, and there's a command for that. So we're going to create a Django project. Now, in the previous class, I spoke about how Django actually structures applications. In a Django website project, you have the project itself as the overall, like the mother of all. Then you have apps. You have sub application called apps inside the Django project. So the way it's being structured is you have the parent project and then you have different applications. So in this lesson, we're just going to be looking at a pages application. So maybe how to build a static page. if you're trying to build an e-commerce application, you won't just you don't just create a project and put all your functionality in one application. So the application essentially is just different functionality that your project needs to have. For example, if you're building an e-commerce application, if you want to store, you can have an app called Products. So every functionality that has to do with product and stock management will be included in that app application, right? That app subdirectory. Then if you're dealing with things like maybe user login, you could create a separate app such as authentication or accounts or users for managing all your users in the project. So this is how you structure your project in Django. You have literally two apps as sub-components in your entire project. So we're going to see a practical example. But first, let's start a project. So first, so this is the command we're going to be using to start our Django project. So Django admin start project and the name of the project. So in this case, the name of the project is Hello Django, right? So this is how it works. You use this command, Django admin. This is a built-in command that comes with Django. Since we've installed Django in our application, we now have access to this Django admin command. So this admin command is going to be attached to this start project command. So Django admin start project, and this Hello Django can be any name. So in our own case, we want the project name to be Hello Django. That's why we're using Hello Django. Just can be anything. So once we hit this command, it's going to create a Django project. Since we've already installed Django in our directory, the next step now is to install, start a Django project. Then after starting a Django project, we'll now move on to other stuff. So remember, first we create a virtual environment. We activate the virtual environment. We install Django. Now we need to start a Django project, right? So this is the command for starting a Django admin start project. In our own case, Hello Django is the name of our project. Now, if you notice, I have a dot at the end of Hello Django. Now, the reason why I added this dot is because if you don't add this dot, it's going to create another directory inside this Hello Django folder. It's going to create two directories called Hello Django, which is like duplication. But if you don't want that duplication, for me, I felt it's neater if you just have one folder inside that is housing everything. But if you don't add this dot, it's going to create two folders for this application, and that's just redundancy. So each time you start a Django project, make sure you add the dot at the end of the name of the project so that it doesn't create another extra directory in your application. So let me just run this command and see what I have. Okay, now I just ran the command. It has created a Django project inside the Hello Django folder. Now I'm going to list the directory. If I just do ls, it will list the directory. Now you see I have my manage.py file, and then I have my Hello Django project. Remember I said a Django project must have the parent, which is the project name. Inside this folder, there are other files I'm going to explain. Then you can now start adding apps inside. So let's quickly open this in Visual Studio Code. If you do code dots, it's going to spin up this project in a Visual Code editor. So I just did that now. Code dots will open an instance of this project in a Visual editor so that I can show you how everything works. What Django creates for us by default. So this is the boilerplate. So first, we see that in this hello world, let me zoom in a bit. So we see that in this hello Django template, there's already a virtual environment which we've initiated, right? Now, with the Django admin start project, we started this Django project, right? And then it gave us a file, manage.py file, and then it gave us a folder that has this underscore in it, the ascii.py, settings.py, urs.py, then wsgi.py. So I'm going to just explain what each of these things, what they do basically, and then we'll now proceed. So essentially, Yes, anatomy of a Django project, right? So now that we've opened up this in our terminal, as you can see, we've opened it up in our terminal. Yes. So let's take a look. Like I said, we have the Hello Django folder, and then we have the underscore init. And then we have the ascii.py, settings.py, urls.py. These things are very, very important. So let me explain what these folders mean. Okay. So I'm just going to talk about the settings for now, right? The settings.py file is where you put in all your settings in your project, right? So when you create an app inside your project, like an app that's supposed to have a different functionality, you have to include it in this settings.py, right? The urls.py is the entry point of your application. This is the two most important files you need to really understand, right? The urls.py file and then the settings.py file. So the settings.py file is where you add all the settings of your apps or the entire project settings. This is the file where you add all of them. We'll look into it in a more detailed way. Then the second file, urls.py file, comes default to. This is the entry point of your application. So let's say you go to port 3000, localhost port 3000 or 8000. It is what you define in this urls.py file that will determine the home page of your website, So we'll also look into that. Now that we've created a Python, a Django project, let's try to now confirm that everything is working, and let's run a Python manage.py run server. Now, the reason why this is going to work is because if you look at our project here, remember we have this file called manage.py file. This is an administrative file. It has some built-in commands. You can use this file to initiate certain commands. For example, the run server command. This is the file that is responsible for executing that run server command. Right? We can't see a lot in this file because a lot of the things have been abstracted away from us, but it works. So this file is what we'll use to either do migration to database. This is the file we'll use to do things like running the server. So now let me just go back to my console and do Python manage.py run server. So when I spin up this, it's going to start a Django project for me through that manage.py file that was created when we started the Django project. Okay, yeah. So it says it has started a Django dev server, starting development server at port 127.0.0.1 8000. So let me just quickly go to this port in my browser. If I enter this, yes. So can we all see now that we now have the installation worked successfully, congratulations, the bug is set to true, blah, blah, blah. So you can now see now, we've spin up an instance of a Django project running on this port 8000, right? So this is the entry point of our application. Let me quickly show you guys something. Okay. If you come to urls.py file, if you see, we can go to /admin, but right now we've not set up a super admin yet. But now we've not defined. There are other things we need to define in this URL, like our homepage. Each app we build, we have to include it in this URL, right? We need to add it. Each app we build. So now we're going to create an app, and then we're going to add the app in this URL as a list of items. But before then, we've just spin up an instance of Django application working correctly. So does anyone have any question before we move on?
Personally, I have no question.
Okay. Is Hassan there? Okay, done. Hassan is off. So now let's move on. So this manage.py module is something we can call to run various Django commands that we'll be teaching during this project and other projects. I just spoke about that. Now, let me quickly go over this stuff we have here. Okay, let me quickly go over these files that we have here. So basically, now the init file is an empty file that tells Python to treat the my site directory as a Python module. So each time we create a package, it usually has this init.py. So essentially what it just does, we don't have any business with this file. It's just trying to tell Python that this is a package on its own. So if you look at it in a way, all our apps that were going to be created are packages on their own. So that's how Python knows that this is a separate package, it's a separate app. So every time you see this init, it just shows that this is an app. That's how Python knows it's a package on its own. So that's what it does. Then we have the asgi.py. This is the configuration to run your project as an asynchronous server gateway interface application with ASCII compatible web server. ASCII is the emerging Python standard for asynchronous web servers and applications. So essentially what we're saying is this ASCII file is when you're building a Django project, you typically have two web servers. The default one is this WSG.py. This is a server. And we have this ASCII, which is also a server. So this ASCII is responsible for asynchronous requests. So when a client makes requests to Django web server, and if the request is supposed to be asynchronous, like when you're dealing with real-time requests with socket, building chat application, you typically use this ASCII server. But if you're dealing with basic requests, the default Django request, you use this WSGI server. So that's just different. They are both servers, right? So the ASCII is responsible for asynchronous server requests, while the WSG is responsible for basic HTTP request response cycle without asynchronous functionality. Then we have the settings.py. Like I said, this indicates settings and configuration for your project and contains initial default. So let's quickly take a look at what this file has. So if you open now, you can see a lot of stuff. Let me delete some of these boilerplates we don't need. So we're going to be spending time in this project, in this settings.py file, because this is where we actually do things like database configuration. You can see Django comes with a default database, SQLite 3, SQLite 3 database by default. Then this is where we define our application server, this WSGI, this file here. We imported this file in these settings to say that this is the server we're going to be making use of. Then we have our templates, we have our middlewares. These things are built-in functionalities to make our Django web application work properly. Then installed app is also a settings. This is where we add different applications to our project. Each time we create an application, this is where we add the application. Then we have debug set to true. We have allowed hold. So all of these things are basically settings we can do in our application, right? We have static URLs. All of this, we'll look into them bit by bit as we move on. So this is where all our settings are. Okay, then the URLs.py file. This is the place where your URL patterns live. Each URL defined here is mapped to a view. So like I said, each web application has an entry point. It is the URLs.py file in your settings application that determines the entry point of your application. I'm going to elaborate more on this by the time we begin to build more applications for our project. So yeah, these are the things I just went through. The debug, which is a Boolean. This is to say that when you're in local development, debug has to be set to true so that you can see the errors as your application tries to output them. But in production, debug is supposed to be set to true. This is what I'm talking about. This debug is true because we are developing locally. But in production, the bug is supposed to settle before, so that your users don't get to see the errors that your application, if your application is actually having some bugs, they don't have to see what the bug is. But in development mode, this has to be true. Then this secret key is something that is very, very important too. Every Django project has a secret key. If you clone a Django project from GitHub, sometimes you have to create a secret key for that project, because this is the unique identifier for each Django project. There's a tool for creating this in the command line, even online. So allowed host setting is the URL of your application, like your domain name, right? This is where you add your domain name in your application, so that, because Django has built-in security, if you don't define the URL that is going to spin up your application, your app will not work. So once you have your domain name, this is where you add all of your domain name that will call your Django application. So let's quickly move on. Yes, allowed host, installed app. This is where you add all of your applications. Then you have your database setups, you have your language and all. As we get familiar with this, we'll understand how these things work. So we've created a brand new Django project. Next is to create our database, right? How do we create a database? By default, Django comes with an SQLite 3 database, thanks to its batteries included philosophy. Now, if you're building applications with, let's say, Node.js, for example, Node.js is a JavaScript runtime for building server applications with JavaScript, right? So Node.js by default doesn't come with its own database. You have to install third-party packages like Mongoose, to connect to a MongoDB database. But Django has a batteries included philosophy, so it comes rather with a database for us. But this database is essentially a development database. It's not advisable to use SQLite 3 database for production, right? So now we're going to run our first migration. This migration command is going to create a database for us, right? So each time you start a Django project, because Django comes with some defaults, you have to always run python manage.py migrate, so that it can create a database for us and create the tables in our Django admin. For example, Django has a default user authentication system, right? So it comes built in with authentication. So if you don't run migration, you can't even create a super user for you to log into the admin dashboard. So you have to run this python manage.py migrate command, so that you can create a Django database. So let's quickly go to the terminal. Let's Control C to stop the server from running. Now I've just stopped the server instance. Okay. So python manage.py migrate. So remember I said the manage.py file we have in our project root directory is responsible for all of these commands, right? So let me run this migration command. Yes, it's trying to spin up all the migrations, create users table, all of the defaults that comes with Django. Yes, so we've done that. We just ran this. Our tables have been created. Now it's time for us to create a super user. So this is what we just saw now during the process of migration. So the next step is to create a super user. So like I said, Django is a batteries included framework. It has authentication built in, login, logout. And then it gives you this beautiful interface where you can actually log in to see as an admin, like I say, as a super admin. So, but right now, let me just show us, let me spin up, continue the development server. So I'm trying to spin up this server. And then when we come to our project, the project we just created, the Hello Django project, if you come to the urls.py file, you remember I said this is the entry point of your application. Now, by the time we go to /admin, it's going to take us to our admin interface, right? So let's check and see. /admin/ okay. Yes, so this is now the admin interface where we have, but we can't log in now into this admin interface because we've not created a super user. So let's quickly jump into the terminal and create a super user now. So Django comes with this by default. So let's do python manage.py create super user. So this command, create super user, is going to create a super user for us, and then it's going to prompt us to enter the email username of this super user so that we can now have that credential and log in to the admin dashboard. Okay, now it's asking me to type in the username. So I'm just going to say James, or I'll just do username is email. So email address will just be, let's say, admin@email.com. This is just for test purposes. Asking me for password. Yes. Can we hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. It seems like my network froze, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I can't see your screen as well.
Okay, sorry. So what I did was, where did we break off from? I created a super user because
From the password, sorry.
okay, from the password. Yes, I just entered my password, and then now it's allow me access to create. I just created a super user basically with password, email, and username. Now I want to spin up the server. Remember the command python manage.py run server. This run server command is going to spin up the server back so that I can view my website from the browser, right? From the client. So let me spin up the server again. Usually the server spins up at port 8000. Okay, so now let me go back. It's working. So let me go to /admin. When you go to /admin port 8000 /admin, now it's asking you, this is now a Django administration interface. So it's asking me to input my username. My username is username, and my password is, okay, so let me log in to this admin. Okay, beautiful. So now this is the default administration interface that Django comes with. This alone is a lot. There's a lot of work under the hood. Can we all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, this alone is a lot. Now, if you don't really know how the web works, right, as a backend developer, having this administration interface alone can allow you to do a lot of stuff. Now, in the future, by the time we begin to create applications, this Django admin can help us to manage all of those apps individually. You can see the, like, let's say for users now, this comes with a default user. If you click on this, you can see that this is the first user and is an admin. This is the credential of the user, right? This is, so by the time you now have your own, you've defined your own user model such that your application, let's say your application needs users to log in and log out, you have to still do some little improvement on this. So this is where you see all your users. Now, if your application has products, right, you will see it listed here. So Django already comes with that interface for you to manage all of your tables and your data from this admin interface. You can even delete stuff, right? And then it communicates to the database and does that. So this interface is just like is what connects your Django, your data to your Django application to your database. It gives you this visual editor to manipulate your database even from this admin interface. So do we have any question before we move on? I'm simply going to just log out from this interface and go home.
Okay.
Any question?
Yes. If I understand you very well, if I may like describe this Django admin and user you are just explaining now, you said it's just like similarly maybe like a control panel, right?
Yes.
Where you can have a add-on domain where you can add more and more people's domain and take help them like take care of it or have access to their own website or something like that.
Okay, I think this does not cover that domain and all of those stuff. What this does for you, if you are familiar with WordPress, right? This is like your content management section. You can add users, delete users from that admin interface, from this interface. You can add users, delete users. By the time you create your models, so let's say you have your blog post. Let's say you're building a blog application, right? You're going to typically, by the time you create that app, remember I said Django has a built-in, Django comes with a built-in database for you. So anytime you create an application, all your applications are going to be listed here. For example, this users is an app, is a default app that Django creates. By the time you create your own app, let's say you are creating a blog application. Your post, for example, can be an app. So that post app is going to show you as a table of all your posts. You can even delete and add posts. So think of it as a content management session where you can manipulate all your models, your tables, your data, and then it's connected to your database. Whatever you do here affects your database. So it's not like the typical cPanel for WordPress. It's just like your CMS. If you're familiar with WordPress, it's just like a CMS, a content management section where you can manage your models. Your models are your data, are your apps. Do you get? And
Yes.
some other stuff you can do. So don't worry, with time you get to understand more about how the Django admin works.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir. So do you have any question before we move on? No question, right?
No.
Okay, so now what we're going to do next is we're going to build a pages application. Now, how you start a Django project, once you get a requirement from your users, let's say you've spoken to the clients, they've told you what they want. The next thing you need to do now is simple. You have all the requirements, okay? Now, every application has a static page. What I mean by a static page is that a static page is just a page that displays information, right? Like when you land on, let's say, mtn.com, for instance, that first page where you see about the company, basic information, those are static pages. So static pages, literally, they just display information. That's what most websites do. When you want to build a website for people, most of these company websites are static websites. They just display information. So every Django web project starts with a static page. You can't just start building complicated web application without static page because most times you will need to talk about the app. You need to have contact pages, about pages, even theme pages and all of those stuff. So to kickstart things, we are going to start by building a static pages. Now, I want us to understand something. HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is not part of the scope of this lesson, right? Now, Django has something called template engine. The template engine is what returns your HTML to the client. So when you make a request to the server talks to the database, talks to does application logic and sends a result. Remember, input, processing, and output. So once it does the output, it can send an HTML template to you. Now, Django has the capability to display HTML inbuilt. So, but it is not in the scope of this our backend development to talk about HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. If you want to learn about that, you can look at a lot of tutorials on HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, okay? But I'm going to be using Bootstrap to just quickly do scaffolding and then bootstrap things faster so that we can see how Django sends HTML templates and then you can view it. Besides that, Django also sends JSON data. JSON is JavaScript object notation, right? This is when you're sending just strings of data to the front end using endpoints. If time permits us in the course of this training, we're going to look at how to build application endpoints, right? But Django has the capability to build just your traditional web application where you send HTML to the client by default, and then you can also send JSON in the form of REST APIs, okay? So when you have front-end developers, you have back-end developer, when you're working in such an environment, you can just, as your job as a back-end developer is just to write the application logic, talk to the database, send JSON back to the client. So it is now the responsibility of the front-end guys to connect to your own URLs called endpoints to get data from your back-end application. So now we're going to shut down this app running and exit this environment and create a brand new virtual environment and then a brand new application Django project. Does that make sense? So the flow is still the same thing. First, you create a virtual environment. 2, you activate the virtual environment. 3, you install Django, and then you start a Django project. So, but in this case, you're going to start a Django project known as Pages. So this Pages application is basically going to display list of pages to us, okay? Just our home page, about page, and stuff like that, okay? So, but before we continue, we're going to go on just a 5 minutes break, and then we'll come back by 6:25. Hello, guys. We're going to build in a brand new application. It's just a static website. I think I just feel that it should be the starting point, because tomorrow, if you're going to be building any application, these applications, no matter how complicated it is going to have a landing page. So the landing page essentially is what's going to tell people about your product, your features, your benefits, contact, and all of those stuff. So we're going to start by building a static website, right? So remember, first thing first, you create your virtual environment, okay? So let's create a virtual environment with this command. Under create a virtual environment with Python 3.9. And then the name of the virtual environment is going to be this static website, right? So that's going to be our virtual environment. So now I just run the command. Okay, trying to spin up virtual environments. Then the next thing we'll do is to activate the virtual environment. So activating it simply means like you're moving into the virtual environment, right? Okay, still trying to spin up. So after that, we'll create a project template or a project directory rather. And then inside that directory is where we'll now do all of our installation. So the process is pretty much the same. Never start a Django project without a virtual environment, and make sure the project, the environment is already activated. And how do you know if an environment is activated? Like you're inside that environment, you see that curly braces. Right now, for this, we are in the base conda environment. By the time we move into our own environment, you see that it will change from base to this static website environment. So it's still trying to spin up. Let's give it some seconds. Once we do that, we'll now do our installation of Django, right? So I'm going to be leveraging on Bootstrap for the template. Like I said, the scope of this lesson does not include HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's front-end development. But I don't know, how many of us have an idea what Bootstrap is?
I do.
Okay. Husseini,
No idea, sir.
no idea. Oh. So you've not interacted with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript before?
No, I am just learning. I just started learning. I joined the course recently, so I have not gone far.
Okay. I would advise you to really familiarize yourself with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. These are the three technologies that handles front-end development, right? So HTML is the structure, CSS is the styling, JavaScript is all about interactivity. Once you're familiar with them, you can now begin to go into libraries and framework. So Bootstrap here is a CSS framework that helps you to style your website easily. It has another rival that is really strong in the community now, Tailwind CSS. And that's what most people use like right now. But Bootstrap is still pretty much okay. Then you have things like React. So please learn HTML, CSS, and JavaScript by the side because Django uses HTML to send information to the browser. So typically, when you make a request, like all these things you're seeing is HTML. If I try to go back to, okay, it won't work because I've shut down the server. But these things are just HTML and CSS, right? So you need to learn them, but it's not part of the scope of what we're learning at the moment. But I'll try my best to explain how they all work together, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
What is this in my office? Can you imagine? Well done.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Meanwhile, just a quick one. Is it a good, right? I heard that Bootstrap, right? It's kind of outdated, and Tailwind CSS is the new thing. Is it okay to not go in depth into Bootstrap and just focus on Tailwind CSS?
Sorry, is it for this class or you're speaking generally for yourself?
I know it's outside the scope of this class. I'm just speaking to them.
Okay, no, we are not. What I'm going to be doing is basically getting some components just to display my homepage. I'm not really going into what Bootstrap is and how it works. All I need to do is to get, like, for example, if I need a navbar, I can just come here and get a navbar. You get. So that's essentially what I'll be doing, right? Installing it. But for Tailwind CSS, the process of configuration is actually a bit more advanced. So that's why I'm using Bootstrap. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's more advanced to install Tailwind in a Django project. There's a lot of process to do that, but you can actually check that up on your own. It's not as if Bootstrap doesn't work well. It's still very powerful. It's just that it has the why Tailwind. What makes Tailwind shine better is because Tailwind just comes with some utility classes. It allows you to customize your website the way you want. Meanwhile, most Bootstrap websites look similar, right? It doesn't give you so much customization. So that's just basically the difference. Okay. So
Thank you.
yeah. So let me just activate the virtual environment. I think it's static websites. Yes, static websites. Okay, as you guys can see, I'm now in my virtual environment static website. Okay, now I'm going to create a project now. The command is make directory. I'll still name the project, the folder name, static websites. Okay, so I'm going to make this directory in my desktop and cd into static. So I'm inside the static website directory. My virtual environment is activated. Now, the next thing now is to install Django inside this directory. You can do pip install Django, right? Or you can just do Python install Django. So just going to copy this and paste. All right, so now this installation of Django will give us some utility command for us to continue on our project. So this command will install the latest version of Django. So, but if you want to, if your project requires an older version of Django, you can actually specify the version of Django you want, right? But for this command, it's going to install the latest version of Django, which is 5.0 as at the time of this lesson. So so before that, okay, it's trying to collect the packages. So after that, the next thing we'll do is to actually start a Django project, right? And we all know the commands for that. Django admin, start project. Who can remind me what I said about this dot operation after the project name? This dot operation. When you run Django admin start project, then the project name, what does this dot operation does at the end of the project name?
It prevents the.
Okay, go on.
Who is talking?
I wanted to like say something. I had Dominic say
Okay,
something.
Hussein, you just ride on.
Okay. According to what I understood, you said the full stop stop you from making a duplicate environment.
Okay.
I think so.
Dominic,
Like,
can I hear your thoughts?
Okay, it prevents your app from creating another folder.
Yeah.
So it
Essentially,
runs in the existing folder.
yeah,
You're running
yeah.
that command. Yeah.
So I think Hassan, you're saying you missed the word. It's not. It's a folder. It just stops you from creating another parent folder inside the static web project. It's like redundancy, creating multiple folders, which doesn't really make sense. So you can try it on your own, just without the dot to see what it does. It creates two folders for you, one for the project, and then adds the project inside that folder, and then you have your parent folder again. So for me, it's not a neat structure really. So the command now, Django admin start project. Now the name of this project is going to be static web project, right? So this is what is going to show in our project directory. So let's run the command and see what comes up, and then try to spin up an instance. So I'm just going to close this first one, this hello Django project we created. We don't need it. Just going to close that. Is my screen bold enough?
yes, sir.
Okay. Oh. Okay. All right. So we've just done that. Now, the next thing is I just want to, I can decide to run my server, or I can decide to, for example, I can run this server to see my project. But let me just open an instance of this project in code editor. Code dot will help you to open an instance in your VS Code. So it's going to spin up, yes, as you can see, this is an instance of VS Code that has my project. You see that command now helps me with this. It creates a folder for me, static web project. So without the dot, you will see two folders here. You will see this static web project inside another folder, which doesn't make sense. That's without that dot. Then we have the manage.py file, which handles all those commands like migration, run server. So by default, this comes. And then remember our asgi.py file, our settings.py file, and all of those things it creates for us by default. Now I can move ahead to spin up, just do python manage.py run server to just spin up an instance of this project. So while that is coming up, let me quickly explain again how Django project structure works. So it's all about apps inside of a project, right? You can see from this, can we all see my screen?
Yes.
So it's all about apps. You can create as many apps as you like inside of a Django project. So typically we have something like this, right? Now you can have apps inside this root directory connected to this project. And all of those app settings will be inside this project settings. This file, this is where you set any functionality. This is the settings of file where you that controls all the settings of the app. So you will see now, we'll create another app. Inside that app, you will see it located here with its own bunch of configurations, okay? So let me just see if our server is running. Let me just refresh this, go to this port. Okay, yeah, so our installation is successful. We have a brand new Django project running. So quickly, let me create an app. I'm going to stop this server for me to create an app. So if I come back to my, so each app controls an isolated piece of functionality. For example, if you're building an e-commerce website, your web project can have an app for product listing, an app for authentication, an app for payment, all under the same project with distinct functionality. So you get the logic now. If you're dealing with authentication, you can create an app that handles just authentication. If you're dealing with payments, you can have an app that does that. Orders, you can have an app that does all your orders and all of those stuff. So to create an app called pages in your project directory, simply type the following command. It's very simple, python manage.py start app pages, right? So this manage.py file is very, very useful because with it now, we use it to run migration in the previous setup. We've used it to run server. Now we're using it to start an app called pages. So let's go back to the terminal now and run the command. So python manage.py start app, what's the name of the app? Pages. So if I hit enter, it's going to spin up an app for me called pages. I think it has done that. Let me clear this terminal and list it. So now this is the directories I have inside my project. I have the static web project, which is the default when I did Django admin start project. It creates a DB SQLite database for me by default, the manage.py file. Now, this is the pages application. This is an app. I can create multiple apps and they'll be listed in the directory. So let's go to VS Code and see how it's been listed in VS Code. Okay, now you can see in VS Code that I have this pages app now. And these are the files. And these are the files inside the pages app. We have the init.py. This init.py, like I said, it's very, very important. And you always find it in every Python Django project and pages app. Django apps and project, you always find this init app because it's what tells Django that this is a package, right? This is an application. Now you have this admin.py. Typically, this file is where you add your admin settings. Now, as we've created this pages app, it's by default, it won't show in your Django admin interface. So you have to declare it here. You have to declare that this app you want it to show in your admin, and this is where you do the configuration for that. Then this apps.py, typically you won't touch this. This is for Django. It's just saying that the name of your app is called pages. So typically you won't do much here most of the time. Then your models. This is where you define your data. This model is where you like, let's say for instance, you want to build an app that does product listings. Every product has certain fields and features. This is where you define them. We'll come back to that. We'll come back to this subsequently. Then we have the test.py. This test.py file is where you run your tests in your Django application, because testing is very, very important. Modern development workflow requires that you test your application and your project before you deploy. Then the views. The view is basically the middle guy, the guy that controls all the requests that comes into your Django application, talks to the database, sends response back. You spend a lot of time in this file, this views.py file, very, very important. It's like the controller when you're dealing with an MVC framework. But in Django, it is it's MVT. So the view is the middle guy that controls the request and response cycle. There's another file that is not here. We'll create that file shortly. It's called the urls.py file. Let me create it. So let me cd into the pages app. I think I can do code urls.py. This will create a file known as urls.py inside my pages application. Yes, it has done that. You can now see. Yes, you can now see urls.py. So this also manages all your URLs, like your basically your links, right? This manages all the links in this pages application. I'll come back to that shortly. But for this URL, there are two URLs, one for the pages application and one for the project level application. This one for the project level application is the entry point of all your applications. So if I don't define this pages app here, I can't be able to access it on my website. I have to include the URL into this pages application into this URL path. If I don't define it here, I cannot see all my pages, all the templates in this pages application, right? So this is where I have to define. If I create another application, I have to define all that I need to access the application here. So this is like the entry point of your application. So quickly, let's move on. So I just created my pages app. Like I said, the admin is the configuration file for the built-in Django admin app. The apps.py is a configuration file for the app itself. Then there's a folder called migrations. It keeps track of any changes in our model. So this is the folder we're talking about. Look at it. It handles everything related to the database migration. Typically you would not need to touch this file. You don't really need to touch that file. So next we have the models.py file. This is where we define our database models, which Django automatically translates into database tables. Every modern application has to do with models, database model, because you typically need to store things in your database. So these models.py file, once you define your models, it's now Django translates it into a table for you automatically. And that's why when you go to your admin interface, you should be able to now delete and do all sorts of stuff. I think my server is not running yet. Okay, yeah, it's not running. So let's move on. So the test.py file is for our specific tests, right? Then the views is where we handle the request response logic for our web application. This view is very, very important. We'll be looking into it. Now that we've installed, we've created the pages application. Django doesn't know that this thing exists yet. Django doesn't know that this thing exists yet. So what we need to do now, in this settings.py file, here, this settings.py file in the project level, we need to tell Django that we've created an application called pages. So when you come to this settings file, under installed apps, you can see there are default apps that have been installed for us by Django. One is the admin interface. One is authentication. Then we have session, we have messages. All of these things are apps that Django comes with by default. So let's add our own now. All we need to do is to just say pages, right? That's all. We've added this pages application. So Django now knows that we have an app called pages as part of the things it needs to work with, okay? So let's move on quickly. Okay, so now the next thing is let's migrate our database. Remember the command. We can run server and then it will work, but we need to migrate our database before we run server. So let's quickly do that. Let me change directory to the root directory. Yes. So this is the root directory where I have my pages app, I have my static web project and all. So so each time you create a Django project, you have to run this migrate command. You have to do it all the time. The first time you install Django or you create an app, you must run this migrate command so that it will sync with your database tables. Okay, so let me now run the server. So this should spin up an instance, like the server instance. Yes, I can now access my website at port 8000. So if I refresh this now, you can see it to work. Yes, it's now showing me that my server is running. My website is running. So now we've created a pages app. The next thing, can we all hear me?
Yes, please.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what I was saying before the network froze was that you can create your templates, which are essentially where your HTML lives, right? Because Django needs to know what to send to the client when a request is being made from the client. So typically the MVT, the T in the MVT architecture of Django simply refers to the template. So you typically create your templates in the app level template directory or in the project level. And in our own case, I said we should create the template in the project level directory. So I'm going to make a directory known as templates, right? So once I make, oops, sorry, I did it in the wrong. I've gone out of the project. Okay, so I'm back in. So now I need to make a directory known as templates. So we can now see our templates directory. Now I'm going to go into this templates directory. As it stands now, there's nothing inside the template directory, but I'm going to create a file called base.html. Now this file is going to carry our basic HTML structure. and then other HTML file will now inherit from this base.html file. So I'm going to create it inside the templates directory. So it does that for me. Then I need to also make another directory called pages. I'll explain this in a bit. So now inside the templates directory, I have the pages folder, and I'm supposed to also have yes, I have the base.html, and then I have, okay, the base.html was created, yes, inside the templates directory, and then I also have my pages folder. Now, inside this pages folder is where all my HTML are going to live for the pages application. So if I create another application known as, let's say, orders or payments, all the HTML files that has to show my payments interface will be inside the payments folder. So because I have a pages app, I created another folder called pages. So inside these pages now, I will now have other files that are related to the pages functionality inside this pages folder. But the base generally has all the basic styles like your headers and your footers, all the basic styles that all your pages are going to inherit from. So that's how the project structure is going to work. So the next thing I'm going to do inside my Django project settings file, I need to tell Django the location of our templates directory. Since I've created this templates directory inside the project level folder, I need to tell Django where it is. And I need to add this line of code to my templates file. So now if I go to my projects, and I go to the settings.py file, right now there's no definition of, okay, I have the templates here now. I'm just going to clean this up and copy this. Yeah, so basically, I'm telling Django that my templates folder is inside the directory level where the static web project is. They are on the same level. So I just told Django to look for my templates inside at this location instead of the apps pages app location. So this setting is just to tell Django where the templates folder is. So I'm going to save this now. Next thing we're going to look at is how to the base.html file. Like I said, the base.html file is just the parent template file, which other files inherit from. It usually contains the common structure and elements shared across multiple pages of the website, such as headers, footer, navigation, and all of those CSS styling. Other templates in the project inherit from the base.html file, allowing developers to maintain a consistent layout. So we've created a base.html file. I'm just going to copy this code into that base.html file. So this file is what is going to carry our basic styles. As you can see for now, it's empty. Now, I need to add, because we're going to be working with Bootstrap, I need to add Bootstrap styling to this. Husseini, I know you're not familiar with HTML, but you need to level up on that. This is basically HTML. So Django works with HTML by default, using its own templating engine. So now, because I'm going to be working with Bootstrap, I need to add links to Bootstrap so that my styles can make sense. So I'm going to go over to the internet now, and then I already have this tab open. So I'm going to copy some of these links into my project. So So what I'm doing essentially is that I'm trying to link to Bootstrap so that I can get access to their styling using this CDN. It's an online platform to get links. I don't want to start installing Bootstrap afresh into my project. So just copying and pasting these links so that I can have access to Bootstrap functionality online. Copy the JavaScript part. So yeah, so now we have Bootstrap installed. And then now let me quickly explain this base.html file. As you can see, this is our base. So now this is where other content will live. So if you create another page, maybe your home page now, your home page will now inherit from this base.html, right? So this is where the content of all your other pages will live inside this block content code. This is where all the content will live. So now it means that they are inheriting from these base templates. So let me quickly pick a component called header from Bootstrap. This navbar component, let me copy it and paste it here. Because every website will have a navigation, right? So then let me also get the footer from Bootstrap. So just come here and search for footer. I'm trying to get the footer component, but okay, I'll come back to this. So I have my header inside. So now within the templates directory, we've created another directory called pages. And then inside it, we'll create another file named home.html file. So what we're saying is essentially, if you look at our project, we have a templates directory. We have inside the template, we have pages. And then alongside pages, we have the base, which is like the parent HTML file. Now, inside these pages, we are going to create another file called home.html. So this home.html file now, inside these pages, will inherit the styles of the parent, which is this base. Now, if we want to create about page, contact page, everything will have to be inside this pages directory. Why? Because the pages directory is the name of our application. So that's how everything is structured. Now, by the time we create another application, all this, the HTML of the application will be in its own separate folder. Okay? So that's the structure for templating. So I've just done that. Now, I'm going to copy these styles and paste inside that home.css file. Sorry, home.html file that I just created. So I'm going to explain this. Now, from here, you can see that we are extending. You can see this syntax. This is just Django syntax. We are extending the base.html, right? Because this base.html has links to Bootstrap and some basic structure, either header or footer. So we are extending the functionality of this base into our home.html file in the pages directory or the pages folder. So we just simply have an HTML that just says home page. Remember I said in the block code, this is where all our subsequent pages will enter since they are inheriting from this base template or base HTML. So now let me just quickly save this file and see what we have. Before I move on, does anyone have any question to ask?
No, sir.
Okay, so let's talk about class-based views. Now, there's Django, we know the architecture is MVT, right? The model, the view, and then the template. We just talked about templating, how templates handle our HTML file, right? That is being displayed to the user. Then now we want to talk about views, right? So essentially what views does, like I said, views are the controllers, right? So in every application that we create, like our pages application, we have to define our views because view is the view file or module is what handles the request that comes from the client. So in Django, there are two kinds of views, the function-based views and the class-based views. Initially, the function-based view was what the developers of Django created, but it has its own challenges, and then they created class-based view, which is a more higher simplification of the function-based view. So in this level, we're going to be looking at the class-based view. So essentially, Django provides built-in classes that can be used as views. A view is a callable. What is a callable? It's just a function which takes a request and return a response. So it takes a request from the client as an input and then processes that request, that input, and then gives you an output. Essentially, the output is just HTML pages in this case. So now we're going to create our own class-based view. And where is the view code going to stay? Definitely inside the views.py, right? So let's create our own class-based view, which inherits from template view. I'm going to explain what that does. So this is the code we just need for now. We're going to copy this code, come to our project. So inside the pages application, right? Can we now see the way the structure is? We have the templates at the same level with the project. Now, inside the pages application, there's a file that was created for us by default, which is this views.py. This is where all your views in this project can live or lives. We created this URL.py, and I'm going to go into it very, very soon. Now, this views.py, let's simply paste this code. So, so in this file, simply what we're just doing is there's something called the template view. So this template view has been created by Django by default. So we are simply asking Django to go into one of their modules. You know, the modules is called Django views.generic. Go into that file and import template view for us because we want to use it. They have different kind of views. They have the list view, detail view, but in this case, we just need a template view. So we're telling Django to import a template view for us in Django views.generic. There's a folder. We are not seeing it because it has been hidden, but there's a folder called views.generic that has a template view class. So we are now creating our own class called homepage view because we just want to send what this view does is just to send a template called home.html. So we are defining our own class-based view called homepage view. Now, this homepage view is inheriting from the template view built in by Django. And this is the syntax. This is a class-based view. And the only thing we need at this moment is just to tell Django where our template is. In this case, our template is inside home.html, which is this templates pages, which is this file here. So we're simply telling Django in our views that come to this home.html to look for this file, right? So that's what we're essentially telling Django. So I need to add pages. So it's not going to work. So essentially,
Hello, Mr. Dominic.
are we together?
Yes, sir.
Yes, we are together.
Okay, so sorry, my network keep freezing out on me. So before I go into,
You
Okay.
should try Glow. I think Glow is the best network for that. I don't know if it's Glow you're using.
I'm using MTN.
Glow is the best.
Okay, I'll see to that. So basically, let me just give a recap before I continue. Remember, we said Django is MVT, right? So right now, we're not going to talk about the models part. These models of Python is where we define our model, but because it's a basic static page application, we're not going to define our models yet. All we're interested in is just to send a static HTML to the client. So, and in that case, we need to work with our URLs.py and our views.py. By the time we're now trying to create data in the database, then we'll work with our models. But for now, we don't need our models, right? So we've come here to define that using a class-based view, we say that if a request comes into Django, and if you come down to your project level URL, if you come here, if a request enters this part from the project level, comes to the root port 8000, the root, when a request comes, we've told Django to load the pages URL, which is this URL. We're going to define some things here too. So once it now hits this URL.py file will look into this views file, this views.py file. And then it will call this function, right? This class-based view, it will call it. And once it calls this class-based view, this class-based view will now render the template. So it starts from the project level URLs Python at this level. So once a request comes to this project level URLs, this one now calls the project, the app level URLs. The app level URLs now go to the views and then map the request to any of these class. In this case, it will call this homepage view and then render these templates. Now, a lot of things have been abstracted for us. We don't really need to know the step-by-step process. They've defined it. All you need to do is just to plug in the attributes and then it just works. So let's quickly move on. So let's talk about Django URLs. This is the last stage of the process. This URL is the last stage of the process because we've not defined it yet. Because once a request hits the project level URL, it's going to navigate back to the app level URL. So let's quickly talk about the app level URL before we can now finish the process. So if you look at this, the last step is to update our apps URL.py, right? Now, this file to connect to our class-based view. So this is the code base. We're going to import from Django URLs, we're going to import path, and then from the views we've declared, we're going to import the homepage view and then map it to say that when a request comes to this root port 8000, call the homepage view. And what is defining the homepage view? Our template. So we're just going to copy this code and add it to our URLs.py file here. So now, this file, we've added this code here. So what this code essentially is doing is when a request comes to this project level directory, this URLs.py file, when a request comes here, as you can see, we've included all the URLs in the pages.urls.py. So any URL we define inside here will be mapped, will be called from here. So once a request comes, Django takes it, sends it to the pages.url file. Now, then if the request is coming to the homepage view, in this case, the port 8000, that's why we have nothing in this curly braces. But we can also have /about. This is going to the about page, but in this case, this is going to the homepage view. Now, once a request maps here, we call this view, homepage view, that is defined here. Look at it. We call this view, and then this view will be run like a function. It will be run. And what is it going to give us? A template called pages.html. So essentially, that's what this line of code is doing. By the time we want to go to other pages like about page, it's the same process. We create another view called about page, passing the template, and then as the request is mapping to each of those routes, it will be calling them, right? So let me just quickly save this and see what is going to be generated for us. So now we are done. We're going to start up our development server with the command Python manager.py file and then see our changes. We should be able to see these templates render here. We should be able to see this homepage rendered once we call all of this. So let's just make sure all our files are saved. And then I think all the files are saved. Let me check if I have any error. Okay. So let's run our server. If we have an error, it will output it here. But if we don't have Python manage .py run server. Okay, neat. There's no error. So let's go back and see what we have on our home page. I refresh this. Yes, you can now see that I have my home page here. So, and now this home page is inheriting this navbar component. I didn't define this navbar component in the home page. This is strictly from Bootstrap. And the reason why it's there is because in the base template, I defined a header, a navbar rather. I defined a navbar here. So typically your base.html file is going to have a header and a footer because every page or most pages in your application will definitely have a header and a footer. So this is where you define all those base styles, right? Even if you're connecting to JavaScript, CSS, this is where you define it. So that's why our home page is inheriting that navigation we have. So this is it. Now, this is the home page. Now, there's a lot we can do from here. We can add more sections to this page, do a lot of things. It's just a basic example to show you how this works. Now, similarly, I'm still in the Pages app. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to create another view called About Page View so that it can take me to the About page. So I'm going to call this About Page View. Okay. So this should take me should render an about.html. So that's all for the view. Then I'll come to my urls.py and say that when a request is coming to /about, when a request is coming to about / then it should call the about page view. Now I need to import it here. Yeah, because typically for me to use that class-based view, I need to import it into this file. So it's looking at the views directory or the views file here, and then it's importing, this statement is importing the home page and the about page view. So now that I've imported it, I'm using it now inside my URLs patterns. So I need to change this name to about. So typically what this name does is this name equals to home, name equals to about. What it does is simply, by the time I want to navigate to each of these pages, I'm going to use this name in my code, in my template to navigate to all of these pages. So I'll show us an example soon. So now let me quickly create since I've done my views, I've done my URLs, let me create a template inside these pages. So this template will now carry about.html. Right? So let me just copy. So similarly, in this page, we will just say this is an about page. Okay, so let me see if my server is still running. Okay, it's still running perfectly. Now, if I go to /about, you can see now that I'm in my about page. So this is how routing works and page navigation. So, but in most cases, let me go to this base.html file. If you come to this base.html file, let me clean this. What I want to do is I want to clean this navigation a bit. Just want to clean this up a bit. I don't like what I'm seeing. So if I refresh, yes, I'll just clean the navigation a bit. So I have my nav bar and then I have my home page. Let me add an about page to the navigation now. I'm just going to I'm going to call this my about page. So in Django, the way you navigate between pages is different. You have to use a syntax. And then you say URL. So what we're essentially doing is simple. We're trying to navigate from the base directory, so that from the base directory, I can go to the home page and the about page. Now, this is the syntax for navigating from the home page to the about page. So essentially, we use the curly braces, percentage URL about. So this about now, where oh, hello?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay.
Hi.
Sorry, guys. Network's crazy. So what I did was I had to add navigations from the about to the home page in the base file. So this now bar is coming from the base.html. Now we are currently at the about page, and the way I went navigated was through the URL here, was through this URL, but I don't have to do it that way. If I come to port 8000, it's taking me to the home page, right?
You have not shared your screen.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so Okay, sorry guys, I'm supposed to see my navigation links here. It's not showing. Let me quickly check why it's not showing. This is weird. I can have it here in my links, but I'm not seeing it. Okay, let me just okay. Sorry guys, let me do something. Let me go back to the default. Let me just go back to the there were some elements I deleted. So I think that's where the error is coming.
Do you save?
Yeah. See, I can see from the code like my home page is here and all of that stuff. But I don't know why it's not picking it up. Okay, let me just close this and open another terminal and see.
Maybe the page was cached and then it's
Yes,
reloading the cached
yes.
page.
Yes, I think it's the cache page. I think so. So oops. Oops. Manually the links are working, but it's not loading up for some reason. Okay, let me just let me just remove everything totally. Okay, so so let me manually create. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm just trying to manually create these things so that I can show us how to navigate between this interface. Okay, so yeah, so I just manually created it. So let me just do one for the about page. So just copy. So this is just for demonstration purposes. Here I'm going to do. So this is how you navigate from one page to the other using this tag. So Django has its own templating tags. This is the syntax. You just define a URL function and you pass in the page name as strings. This is a string called home and this is a string called about. So you call the URL function and then pass those strings. And we got this home and about string input from here where we defined it in the pages tab. So any name you use here is what you're going to be using in your base directory to navigate. So let's just try to see if this navigation is going to work. So I forgot to change the name. So this should be about. So essentially, sorry, give me a second, guys. Supposed to wrap this inside and calling. Issue. So I'm supposed to wrap the list item inside an anchor tag. That's HTML syntax. So let's just, yes, so it's now a link. So I'm right here at the home page. If I click this, now I'm at the about page. If I go back, click home, I'm at the home page. So essentially, that's how you switch between pages, right? So HTML, CSS are basic requirements for styling these pages. But since it's beyond our scope, what we're going to be doing is in the next lesson, I'm going to be showing us how to install a brand new template or theme. Maybe if you see a website that you like, and then you want to probably use the theme, or you can go on Team Forex, all these websites that sell themes, you can actually install a brand new theme that you like into your Django application. So I'm going to show us how to do that in the next, I think that should be a pre-recorded video. That's what we're supposed to do this week anyway. So I'm going to show us how to install a template so that your website will look beautiful. This is just a basic setup for this. So now I can also create maybe another page. Let's say in this case a contact page. Contact page. I've added it to the list of items in the navigation bar, but I need to come to my URLs. Now, the way you structure these things does not matter. You can start from your views or your URLs or your models. It doesn't matter. Anywhere you want to start from. You can start by defining your template first, or you define your models first. Anywhere you want to start from. So let's say this is contact. And I come here, add contact. So now let me come to my views. I can create a class-based view now for my contact page. This is the view that will respond when somebody wants to see my contact page. And I can just add contacts.html. Assuming we have our models defined, you might want to reach out to the database to get some data and then send to the template. This is where you can actually do that. But since our website is just a basic templates website for now, you don't have to talk to your database. If not, there are more things you can add to this class, more attributes and more functions, for example. So I've defined my, it's supposed to be contact. Then I'll import it into this URL view. So, okay. So I need to now create it in the templates. I've not created it, so I'll go to my pages. So this pages folder is where all my templates for my pages application lies. So I can now come here and do contact.html. Then similarly, I can just, depending on what I want to add, and come here, just copy this and paste. And look on it. So let me quickly check. Okay, I don't have an error. So, right, so I have, go back to the base, correct this to contact. So come to my URLs. Yes. So I'm good. Yes, so if I go, you can see I now come to navigated back home about. So this is a basic, like I said, style is not covered here, but I'll show us how to install it, a complete theme, so that your website can look like a real brand new website. But essentially, this is how you create a static website using a pages app idea. Then, does anybody have any question?
So,
Does anyone have any question? Hello?
no question,
None
sir.
on my end.
Okay, so I'm just going to show us how testing works. It's very, very important. We test our application. So testing is the next thing we need to do. There's a file called test.py. It comes by default with Django. So I'm going to copy some bunch of code and paste here to test our application, right? So testing works in two ways. If you are testing with a model, like let's say we defined a user with his attributes like name, password, and all of that, then we're going to be using this test case function, but since it's just a static page, we're going to be using this simple test case function. So I'm going to come here, copy all of this code. By the way, the materials will be available for us to actually go through. So we'll copy this, paste inside my test.py file. Yeah, so what I'm just doing is essentially going to explain briefly. I'm testing my homepage to see if there's a URL called / this is the root URL. I'm just testing this page to see, do I have a page that has a URL that starts with a / to say a root, and then does it have a URL, a name called home, and does it have a template called home.templates? So this is testing for the templates. This is testing for that name here. Does this website has this name home? This page, does it have a name home? So that's what all of this, and we wrapped them in a function. This is the Python function. All this, there are 4 test cases here. The first one is checking for the URL. Does our app has a URL called /? If yes, then we pass this test with a status code of 200. Does it have a name called home? And does it have a template called home.html? And does it have a text? It will look into the template, and if it can find this name on page, then it will pass all the tests. So this is a way to test that our application is working. Then similarly for the about page, do we have a route called /about/? And do we have a name called about? Do we have a template called about.html? And So I can do the same. I can just recopy all of this code and do the same for the contact page as well. I'm not going to do that. So that's that. You can do your own test for the contact page if you want. Now the next thing is, let me run the command. So we have a lot. We're supposed to build another app here for a basic. First, we're supposed to push to GitHub, push this code to GitHub, then build another simple app. So this app now is where we'll define our models. So for the sake of time, we'll do a pre-recording now that we'll familiarize ourselves with how to set up a project and create our pages application. So this will be recorded, how to build a simple note app. And then we will now go through all of the process. So I'll record this and send, including the other parts for today. And then be pushing to GitHub. I hope everybody has a GitHub account.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I
Yeah, so
I have something to ask about that GitHub. You know, the last material you send and some of the information, I am unable to understand the interface and how to access those materials.
okay, you've not accessed those materials. Okay, fine. So what we'll
Yes,
do,
I try to like.
can we jump on a call, one-on-one call tomorrow with you, so that
Okay,
I can show you the processes, how to clone a repository into your GitHub environment and how to open it up, start the project, because you really, like for this, I'm going to push this material back to that repo. So you will just see an update. So it's left for you to clone or sync the updates with what we've done now. You know, so I will hang up, we'll go on a call tomorrow, and then I'll explain all of that process to you. So we're supposed to push this to GitHub, and then we're also supposed to build a simple note app. So this note app, the way it works is you create a model, and then once you create a model, because one of the things we've not done in this example is to work with the models of Python. So we're supposed to create a model and then add data. So the note app is just a simple app that will allow us to add notes, maybe a to-do list of what we want to do through the Django admin, and then get the data in our front end. So a lot of the things you'll be doing with Django is called CRUD operation, which is basically, I try to explain what CRUD operation means in our week 2 lesson. It's basically create, read, and update. Create, read, update, and delete. So you will typically create record in the database, read information from the database and list them to the user, maybe list of blog posts, for example, or list of products. Then you can create actually also by creating a record, deleting a record, updating a record. So these are all CRUD operations. Essentially, in web development, this is the bread and butter of web development. You're simply creating apps that talk to maybe a third-party API through all of these methods, right? Creating, updating, deleting. So these are the things you typically do. And then you store those information in the database and then maybe retrieve them if you need them. So we're supposed to build this app. I will do a recording of how it works and then give us an assignment, push to GitHub. Then also we're supposed to learn authentication, how to log in and log out users. This might it might be overwhelming at this stage. So I will encourage us to also do our own personal research, like learn other stuff from other materials online. But it's pretty simple. This is the workflow. You create your models, you create your views, then you add your views to your URLs or file file, then you go to your template and create your template. So the way it generally works is the user makes a request. So this URLs or file file is where we intercept every request that the browser is sending. This partner is saying that the request is coming to the home Like I want to see the home page. That's what this is. So we are defining it to say that if a user wants to come to this home page, let this view respond to that user. So this view is like a class now. It's a class that responds to that user. And what does this home page view typically does? It's just to send a template to the user that is requesting for the home page. That's just what it does. Then here we have the about. So when the user now say, okay, I want to see the about page, then this about page view will send the templates to the user. But the view does more than that. Sometimes they can talk to a database, query the database, get some record, even filter record and send back. But we've not gone into that details yet because we're still like taking baby steps. So that's what all of these things. So if you look at it critically, it's just basically input. A user makes an input to with this string /about, and then a function or a class processes it and sends an output. Remember, input, processing, and output. So basically, that's what we're doing. And for us to get an output, we must define our templates. And like I said, every app must have its own folder. So if I'm building a blog app now, if I'm adding a blog app to this project, I'll create another structure or folder called blog here, and it will carry all the HTML inside the blog. And that will also inherit from the base, this base .html. So typically, this is how you structure your Django project. And then the blog will show here as a separate app, but they are all connected. How are they connected? This is how they are connected through these URLs. Because if I create another blog, it means that what I can do here now, I can add that blog app here by saying that, okay, if I have a request that comes to blog / then I should have blogs.url. You see how they are now connecting. So you can see that this pages app is on its own. I've added the blog app. If I create a blog app, now this is how I'm going to connect it to my project to say, if a URL comes to anything /blog, then it should pick all the URLs in the blog app. If I create a payment, the same thing. These are, they keep connecting to each other. And then you keep building applications like that. So that's the flow. Do you have any questions before we wrap it up for today?
None from my end.
Okay. So you guys should expect a video latest by Monday to solidify all of these things. 2 videos this week. As we're entering, we're expecting 2 videos, including a project for us to do. We know how to set up a basic app now. So we're going to have our first assignment ever, which is building an app, right? But it's still going to be within the scope of what we've learned. If there's going to be an addition, I'm going to include it as a hint to that assignment. And then we take it up from there. So we guys need to also learn how to log in, log out users. In this video, I'm going to be I'll show you guys how to install a full-blown theme. So if I see some theme with HTML and CSS on the internet, I can actually install it into my Django project and then just do some little modification, since we are not focusing on HTML and CSS now. But it's also good for us to learn about HTML and CSS. That's what makes you a full stack developer, right? Then pushing the code to your GitHub with one. So pretty much that's all for now. Sorry we couldn't cover much from what we have due to the internet issue, but I'll make sure the video covers all of these things, right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, so Hussein,
Yes, sir.
yeah, because of the fasting, I think we should have a way to maybe in the next class, we would, by once it's 7, we will now give maybe a 10 to 15 minutes break. You get, so that everybody will be in sync with the timing, so that you
Sir,
can
please
go
come
on.
again.
I was talking about the 7 o'clock. You know, you went off to break your fast. Hello? Can you hear me? Dominic, can you hear me?
Sir,
Yes, I can hear you.
Your voice is ceasing.
Okay, I was just saying that in the next class, we would factor in that time for you to go and break your fast and come back for the class. That's what I'm saying.
Oh.
So as we conclude today's session, I'd like to say, okay, you want to say something?
Yes, sir. I just want to like ask for a request. You know,
Okay.
according to program, we it has been said to be a 7-week program, and
Yes.
we are expected to learn all this thing. But to me, I don't think learning programming like this it is going to be something very easy for me to learn within just that 7 weeks. So my request here is, am I get to like have this same coaching even after the class, because this is just serving as a stepping stone for me in back-end programming. So even after this section or after the 7 weeks, I would like to like continue my learning process in the back end, do more researches. I think it will take more than 1 year for my based on my own learning ability. So my request here is, will I still have that guide and coaching as I normally get here from class?
Okay, the answer is yes. So we have, once we're done with the bootcamp training, you have access. One of the benefits of the bootcamp is that you have access to us. You can ask any question you have. If you're lost, you can just DM me in the group. I'll respond to you whatever challenge you have along the way. Because we know also that 7 weeks would, yes, will not really be enough for you to become a pro in Django development. So the professionalism, the expertise come from the kind of projects you build. And even on this first phase, we're not trying to make you guys build a complicated project, right? It's still going to be a project that covers all of the basic features for you to start building applications in Django, like authentication. You need to learn how to log in, log out users, how to query the database. So these are the things we're going to be covering and much more. But you have access to me, you have access to the team moving forward so that you can solidify most of the fundamental concepts you learn. So I don't think there's a problem at all. We're always here for you. Okay. But on your own part, make sure you're curious to learn on your own and to also do your research, because that's where the real work is. You have to sit down and learn things, research. Okay. Okay, so that's that. So as we conclude today's session, I would like to say a big thank you to all of you guys for sticking around and for making the lessons today easy. So like I said, you can access the assignments. These notes will be on GitHub for you guys to clone and go through. Then also this week, you guys will do your first assignments ever. I'm going to be sending information on the project you guys are going to be working on. Then many thanks to every other person that joined us, like Ishima. I think he's off, you know. So thank you and have an amazing weekend ahead. Thank you guys.